Bold predictions for 2026 in Linux gaming. And I don't know if that was on the show notes or not, so I might be surprising you guys. But
all right.
One bold prediction. It can be ludicrous or realistic. It doesn't matter. Maybe it'll just generate some interesting discussion.
Well, we hit 3% officially this year. So I think my realistic expectation is we'll hit over 4% throughout next year. And that's before, I reckon we'll hit that before the Steam Machine releases, that Linux as a share of users on Steam will hit 4%, maybe midway through next year.
Before summer 2026 then?
Yeah, around summertime, I reckon. Because it is trending clearly towards that point. And it's not all Steam Deck as well. If you look at the trends, the amount of machines actually using SteamOS is going down, whereas other distros are sort of stabilizing in the middle. So I think realistically 4%. And if you look at the trajectory over the next few years, it will just keep going up. It's slow and steady wins the race, basically.
Liam, with all the discussions you have with game developers, what percentage of market share do you think Linux gaming needs to have for them to start actually paying attention?
I think realistically, once you hit 10%, that is the spot where developers and publishers will really be starting to turn their heads, because that would probably be over 20 million people at that point.
That's significant.
That's not a small market when it comes to video games.
Yeah. Is that when we see the end of invasive anti-cheat?
My prediction would be full anti-cheat support by the end of 2026. I think the Steam Machine is what we need to have that, because you can't really say that the Steam Deck is really suited to the competitive shooters and competitive games that really want to have that damn anti-cheat in. So you can always say, hey, yeah, Steam Deck is sort of big, but that's not the platform for our game, so we don't care. Once you have the Steam Machine doing some kind of numbers, some kind of user base, that's the device that you play those games on. That's the device you use a mouse and keyboard on. That's the one that has the oomph to play that. And I think at that point, you have to say, okay, we need to find a solution for the anti-cheat stuff. Now, whether that means we have to implement those horrible things in our computers, or they just get rid of them and go to another model, I don't know. But I would say anti-cheat problems mostly fixed by the end of the year.
Nice. I'm on board for that prediction.
Liam is really unconvinced.
Well, just from what I know of the industry and talking to a few publishers, I would say no, it's not going to happen. Not by the end of 2026, but if the Steam Machine is an actual success, by the end of 2027, now we're talking.
Yeah, because my understanding was that some people are currently working on a multi-kernel support for Linux. And I don't really see what would prevent Valve from working on a dedicated gaming kernel that has the kernel level anti-cheat and use those multi-kernel solutions to load the right kernel for the right game, play that game on the right kernel, and switch to the non-invasive kernel for the rest of the games.
Sounds ambitious, but awesome.
It may not be a 1-year solution.
Right?
Yeah. That's more what I meant.
We still don't have proper
level.
HDR support across the board. So then again, if, we see what happens when Valve throws their weight behind something. So Gardner, got anything?
I don't have like a specific Linux gaming prediction, but I think that we're watching, I feel like I've been seeing the hints and indications that people are starting to take their security seriously, and like their online identity, they want to protect that. They want to maintain their privacy a lot more than they ever have before. And I see that leading into Liam's prediction, where it's like people aren't just switching over to Linux for gaming. They're switching over to Linux because it's the more secure option. It's the better option for your digital autonomy. And so I see, like, if the Steam market share gets to 4%, on Linux, what's the one that's like browser market share or whatever is going to be bigger than that. Like it's going to be growing, and it's going to start growing really quickly. And so I think we're going to hit like a critical mass towards the mid to late 2026. And it's really just going to explode from there. Also, maybe we'll see a bunch of like desktop apps, like proprietary desktop apps, like Affinity, like Affinity's apps and stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, the downside of going last is that 2 of my predictions have already been mentioned. So I'm not going to opt out. I'm not going to pass, but I will say, Liam, I think it's going to be 5% gaming share, and it's going to be 7% browser share. This isn't really gaming, but I think that we will see a very financially successful independent gaming distribution that's not SteamOS by the end of 2025. I kind of just came up with that off the top of my head because I didn't want to repeat what you guys said, but I would love to see, a distro that emerges or already exists that offers, something like Bazite, even though that is propped up by Universal Blue, but they're technically independent. I don't know what that looks like specifically, but just an independent gaming distro that offers an alternative to SteamOS that is financially successful, takes a page from Thunderbird, it takes a page from KDE, and has a really successful fundraising campaign and can just offer, I don't know, more device support, or I don't know what that looks like, but I think we'll see some of these guys come out of the shadows as Linux continues to gain popularity.